Today on the Athlete's Mindset, I'm excited to welcome Max Browne, former five-star quarterback and current ESPN college football analyst and broadcaster. Max was once one of the most highly touted high school quarterbacks in the country, carrying expectations that very few athletes ever experience. He went on to play college football at USC before later transferring to University of Pittsburgh, navigating intense competition, pressure, and the reality that the path doesn't always unfold as planned. But Max's story goes far beyond football. It's about identity, resilience, and redefining success when the game tests you mentally as much as it does physically. After his playing career, he transitioned to broadcasting, earning the opportunity to analyze and call games at the highest level with ESPN. In this episode, we talk about handling massive expectations, facing adversity and self-doubt, and the mindset that helped Max turn setbacks into opportunities, both on and off the field. I'm so excited for this conversation. Let's get into it. Max, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Tristan, what's up, man? Happy to be here.
Dude, I'm so stoked to have you on here. Like I said before we started this, I'm a huge fan of just your mindset, your work as an analyst, as a broadcaster. But before we get into that, I want to talk about your time as an athlete, being a five-star recruit, going to USC, which to some people is just one of like the greatest college football programs of all time. And you get there as a freshman. Can you just kind of go through what that experience was like of committing to USC and showing up on campus?
Yeah, it was crazy. It honestly feels like a different lifetime ago, which is always trippy. And I'm 30 years old. That's old to some people and incredibly young to a different generation. And so it's always weird kind of having or saying it in a different lifetime. But it's true. I mean, that's why it's fun having conversations like this. Like very rarely in my daily life now do people reference me as the former five-star quarterback. But obviously once upon a time, like, that was my entire identity, for better and for worse. But it was incredible. A totally different era than where it's at now. Like the reality is I missed out on a couple $1 million by being,
100%.
10 years too old, 8 years, 7 years too old, which is people in the know are like, yep, that makes sense. People not in the know are like, wait, what did he just say? $2 million? So it works both ways, but it was a blessing. And the line that I always use is, my childhood was a fairy tale. I mean, since the very first recess in first grade, when they roll out the ball, my dream was to be an NFL quarterback, or at least, be the high school starting quarterback and then be a college quarterback, be an NFL quarterback. I never made the NFL piece happen, but to be a 17 years old and the number one quarterback recruit in the country, being able to go pretty much wherever you wanted in school to school and play football there was absolutely a dream come true.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a quarterback in high school and chose between baseball and football in college. And like Oregon was my dream school. My family's from there. I was like, I'm going to be the starting quarterback at Oregon one day.
I was too slow for Oregon. They sent me a couple letters, but they didn't want my pocket passing ass to be on their program.
Yeah, I probably would have been the same way. I was more of a passer and could QB sneak a little bit, but that was about it. And so I chose the baseball route, and kind of similar to you, went to Southern California, quite a ways away from home. When you got on campus as a five-star, do you feel like there was a lot of pressure put on you, or was it pressure put on yourself? And how did you handle that?
Yeah, mix of both. I think it'd be naive for me to sit here and say there wasn't pressure put on me. Like that's just the reality of what you sign up for. It's the reality of not only signing up to play quarterback, but choosing to go to USC and the pressure cooker that is that quarterback room. But I think one of the things that I did not do a great job at is handling the added pressure I put on myself. I put a lot of added pressure on myself. It's funny, much of my college career, or I battled with Sam Darnold in my college career, and I just got off a writer for the Seattle Times up there is doing a piece on him, and he was asking me about that. And that's the thing I envy of Sam, and it's obviously relevant at the time we're filming this. He's gearing up to play in the NFC Championship, but
Yeah.
I was always the guy that was intense. I never needed someone to kind of yell at me or get on me. I was always going to be my own worst critic, and that's great from a work ethic standpoint. It's bad from a just playing football rather than I think I worked football a lot. So yeah, I think there certainly was pressure put on me. The previous number one quarterback in the country that came to USC as a true freshman was Matt Barkley, who started as a true freshman and had a great USC career. So that was the blueprint.
Mhm.
Obviously, my story went a lot different, but both sides of the pressure cooker certainly happened.
Yeah. What would you say was kind of the hardest times of your time at USC? Was it, as a freshman and, not starting like Barkley did, or was it later in your career just realizing like this is a lot harder? And how did you handle those experiences?
Yeah, two events stick out to me. I don't think my wife and I talk about this often, often because she was a Division One athlete as well. I was not blindsided by the demands and the intensity of Division One football. I grew up in a powerhouse high school football program, and so the intensity again of Division One athletics did not blindside me. And I think there's a lot of athletes that it does blindside because it's not as intense at their high school program. But I think the hardest part for me was twofold. The first one is when I lost that quarterback competition, my true freshman year, and then again I lost another one my redshirt freshman year. But that was the first time in my athletic career that I personally had experienced failure. And I know a lot of people don't
Mhm.
like the word failure, and I get a lot of pushback when I use that, but I think that's what it was, right? I didn't win the quarterback competition. That's not saying
Mhm.
I am a failure, but that
Mhm.
one year in that one silo, the goal wasn't accomplished. And dealing with that again, I had had like team losses before, not a lot growing up, to be honest, but
Mhm.
it wasn't on my shoulders that I didn't get it done. It was always, hey, I was
Yeah.
one of the best players on the team and the team lost kind of thing. So dealing with that
Mhm.
was really tough. And then the lowest point of my playing career and then honestly my life was getting benched at USC because
Mhm.
again, at the time you put so much into it. And oftentimes people think, oh, it's you put in that one off season or a couple off seasons.
Mhm.
In my wiring and any athlete, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, like it's not one off season or two off season. It's
Yeah.
a lifetime of investment and pursuit of trying to be the best. And I'd like to think that if you ask some of my former teammates of like, hey, who are the guys in the bucket of like the hardest workers on the team, that I would be
Mhm.
one of those guys. And so to put your identity in hard work, no one's going to outwork me. I'm going to have the right mindset. I'm going to show up and do what I need to do. And for that not to work out,
Mhm.
dealing with that and having to move across the country and dealing with the negative backlash and all that, that was probably the second, most difficult moment that sticks out of my college playing career.
Yeah, that's so hard. I can admit when I was a freshman at Fullerton coming from Nebraska, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like I showed up on campus, felt like, do I really belong here? Am I good enough? I think talent wise I did, but mentally, I really struggled because I held my whole identity to my performance on the field. Like if I had a bad batting practice, I thought I was a terrible person. I was like, what is wrong
Yeah.
with me? I'm failing
Yeah.
at life. Did you ever feel that at USC? Just like, how do you I bet I'm better now, but did you
Yeah.
deal with that? And then have you gotten better of not holding your identity just based on performance?
Well, real quick, I'm curious, and your audience might be find this interesting too. Like, were you that way in high school, or was it just when you got to college?
It was definitely just when I got to college. Like, I'll be honest, like I was, starting quarterback in high school, was all state quarterback, and then, baseball, same thing. Like I just was kind of confident all the time. Like I walked around the halls and was like, yeah, I got this figured out. And I don't know what it was, but yeah, as soon as I stepped on campus as a freshman, I was like, am I even good? Am I good at
Yeah.
sports? Like it was a tough situation.
Yeah, and that's one thing I struggle to verbalize even now, being, years removed from it all is I was a genuine because I completely agree with everything you just said right
Mhm,
there. I was a very confident guy, not phony confident. I
mhm,
like to think I was humble and grounded. I was self-aware and but like I was a genuine confident kid.
mhm,
And you get to college, and the only visual I can lay out to try to explain this is like in high school growing up, there was like two doors. There was either I worked hard and things didn't work out, or
mhm,
I worked hard and things worked out, or I worked hard and things didn't work out. When I got to college, it was
mhm,
like a third door emerged where it was like this performance anxiety,
mhm,
overthinking, seeds of doubt that like I had never literally even entertained that the
mhm.
third door even existed growing
Yeah.
up, and then got to college and yeah, had to navigate that. And to be honest, my most successful teammates I don't even think that third door ever emerged for them, ever. And that's one thing that's I'm a big advocate of a sports psychologist is I don't think people are not confident or I don't think
Mhm.
people are weak or anything like that.
Mhm.
I just think for some people's mental wiring, that third door opens, and for other people, it never does, and they're still able to play football. And candidly, I'm envious of those guys to this day.
I feel the same way when it comes to baseball. I mean, I always had this thought. It was like my brother was one of those guys who played baseball in Nebraska, absolutely raked, was unbelievable, but he just like never thought twice. Like he never had anxiety. Like I was like, no brain, no think. I was like, you don't overanalyze like every at bat or every practice. Like, how do you do that? So, was there a point in your career, maybe transferring to Pitt, which we can get into, where you kind of got over that or handled that a little bit better?
Yeah, I think I slowly got better as I just got older. I don't think I ever fully mastered it because
Mhm.
I never got to the flow state of my college
Yeah.
football career. Had 1 week where I was ACC Player of the Week, and I was like, sweet, all right, now we're finally past it, kind of thing. We're in flow state, for lack of a better term, and then I got hurt the
Mhm.
next week, so it was short lived. But I do think I am proud of how I went about my business when that third door did emerge. Like
Mhm.
I saw a sports psychologist in the fall of my redshirt freshman year when I kind of said, I gave myself, or I tried to give myself some grace to make mistakes as a young player. I don't think I was necessarily great at it, but I tried to. Then I got to a point where I was like, all right, there's something going on here. I'm working way too hard, and
Mhm.
I have and have been told I have too much talent to be playing this way. Saw a sports psychologist, and that certainly helped me and turn the page a little bit. And then as I got older and you just get more mature and you have more scar tissue, I think that allows you to handle these things better. And again, that when you start playing better, that obviously helps everything. And my third spring at USC, I really turned a corner and I thought I was playing really good football, which again,
Mhm.
that helps. And you start thinking less and
Yeah.
having more fun and you start just playing, which is the whole reason that you were recruited there. But I don't think I ever fully mastered that or fully got to that proverbial flow state.
Yeah, it took me until, I mean, I transferred from Fullerton to the University of Portland, and it took me honestly probably till my senior year, my last year of playing, to realize that everything's not life or death, and that worrying about something going wrong isn't going to make it go right. And I just looked back at, all my previous years of college and was like, there were a lot of moments I could have enjoyed a lot more if I didn't put so much pressure on myself or I wasn't so worried about it. And it took a long time to finally understand, like, I'm not going to enjoy this if I'm so worried about failing because it's going to happen. Like, not everything's going to be perfect. Before your injury at Pitt, when you kind of were in that, ACC Player of the Week flow state, what was kind of just going through your head, or was anything going through your head?
It's probably relief was the biggest thing
Yeah.
because for so long I had been doing that on practice fields. It wasn't like
Mhm.
a light turned on or oh my
Mhm.
gosh, that game I was doing something dramatically different. No, it was like, all right,
Mhm.
finally all the things that led me to win a quarterback competition at
Mhm.
USC and win a quarterback competition against another NFL starter at Pitt. Like it was like, all right, sweet. Now we're good to go. But yeah, that Pitt chapter, and you touched on it just on your previous question too. Of like, I do think the USC chapter hardened me in a
Mhm.
good way. Hardened sometimes has a negative connotation, but I do think I got used to some trials that then
Mhm.
when I went into my Pitt chapter, one, I was able to exhale because I was out of the kind of the pressure cooker experience that was USC.
Mhm.
But then two, in my mind, the worst thing that could have happened was me failing at USC and having to transfer. And that happened. And the sun got
Mhm.
up the next day. And I was lucky to have the girlfriend I had and the family and friends
Mhm.
I had. And so I went to Pitt and I kind of was like I had a chip on my shoulder, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think I came with a maybe clearer lens is the best way to phrase that in that year of my career.
Yeah. Um, when I messaged you before this, you talked about how you will openly talk about, how some people viewed you as a bust. And just a quick story, that day that I decided I wanted to get into the sports talk industry, I was watching ESPN, and I'm not going to name any names, but one of the analysts said that Bryce Young might be the biggest bust of all time. And Bryce Young and I are the same age. So he was 22 at the time, saying he could be the biggest NFL bust ever. And in my head, I was like, imagine going up to a 22-year-old at their first job and just telling them, hey, you're never going to be anything. You're going to be the worst. How did you handle just the, bus talk and like people not really believing you or not talking so highly of you? How did you handle that?
Full ownership, full
Mhm.
ownership. I mean, I knew what I signed up for. I knew what I signed up for when I wanted to be a quarterback. I knew what I signed up for when I went to USC. I knew the realities that, hey, this is what sports is. And so when that started to become a narrative to some people about my career, like that's what you signed up for, Max,
Mhm.
and that kind of mindset. And that ownership has given me a lot of peace in my life. It's allowed me to move forward. But like I referenced earlier, it is the message I get the most pushback on.
Mhm.
Oh, Max, you're not a bust, and it's a no-win conversation
Yeah.
because if I own it, then I'm being too harsh on myself. If I don't own it, then it's a recipe for being bitter in life, or around the dinner table always talking about how you got screwed, and your parents talking about how you
Yeah.
got screwed, and every person talking about how, oh, you got screwed and you should be in that position. Or the third window, for another third door reference, is I think people don't like it because, Max, if you're a bust, well, then what the hell am I? Like, you at least played
Yeah.
it. As the years go on, it's like, oh, you at least played at USC, and you at least got a Division I scholarship. So what does that make me? And so then you're kind of
Mhm.
a schmuck in some people's eyes
Mhm.
by saying that. So it's a no-win comment, but I feel obligated to own it because it's my truth. Like that's what you signed up for. And I also, I've been around dinner tables and Thanksgiving tables myself where many times where people will talk about how Mark Sanchez is a bust. And I'm like,
Mhm.
guys, how unaware are we that Mark Sanchez, a very accomplished USC
Yeah.
quarterback, you're calling him a bust, and I'm at the same dinner table at you? Like, what the hell are we talking about if that's your lens? Because I've just been there. I've been on the fan
Yeah.
perspective, and it's almost laughable that when a guy who was just as big of a recruit as me had a way better career, but then you
Mhm.
see a butt fumble in 2009, and so he's a
Yeah.
bust. So to me, it's there's a lot of layers to that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's so funny just, like, as a fan, and you've probably experienced this too, is you're watching a game with your buddy or something, and the offensive coordinator has a crazy call or something doesn't go well, and you're like, "What are you doing? I would've never done that." And I was like, "Well, you're not in their position." Like, people always wanna judge and critique. It's even the same thing, we'll get into, the content creating, but, like, people will judge people that create content and put it out on social media, and you're just like, "Well, you never worked so hard to get there, or you never, put yourself out there to really get there." And I think that's a great way to put it. It's just that, you have to have a lot of perspective and the ownership to really get through things, or else you're just being naive and you'll never get anywhere.
I think that's well said. I think that's well said. Yeah, it reminds me of the old adage, like, you'll never get criticized by someone who's more successful than you, like,
Mhm.
because they just have bigger fish to fry. And that's always a helpful mindset for me of like, all right, the people that are like poo-pooing, I've been there, man. When I first started calling content, like my best friends, they're my best man and one of my groomsmen at my wedding, like, felt like it was their duty to be like, yo, Max, what are you doing, man? Like, why,
Mhm.
why are you doing a Taylor Swift TikTok sound? Like, what are you doing? And then
Mhm.
sure enough, 3 years go by and the most famous voices on ESPN might be doing a Taylor Swift TikTok trend.
Mhm.
And at that point it's like cool, but yeah, it's all perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to transition now into post grad. You get done playing, and for me, like I said, I was an unemployed 22-year-old former student athlete and had no clue what I wanted to do. And finally was like, all right, let's start a podcast. Let's do something. Can you explain that 18th month period after graduating and
God.
just trying to figure out life?
Yeah, it's kind of a term or a phrase that I've coined on my by myself just with having these conversations over the past, 8 years ever since I've hung up the cleats. But just the 18-month window for athletes that, I don't know if I've ever met a high level athlete that truly transitions smooth to the next phase. That might be
Mhm.
a little bit of a stretch. There's guys that make it easy, but the 90% of people,
Mhm.
if you're a high level athlete, struggle in some capacity transitioning to the next phase of life. And that 18-month window is critical because even if, and I'm not saying you have to have all the answers in 18 months, but it sets
Mhm.
the tone for really the next decade or maybe your life, depending on the actions that you take. I've seen a lot of guys that take no action and just kind of float. And where that
Mhm.
happens is you always float back to what is comfortable and what's like right in front of you, which for a lot of guys is not utilizing their degree, not moving to a city to chase opportunity. It's falling into, what their local ecosystem is kind of telling them to do, which I've seen that story time and time again. And then there's other people that, and I'd like to think I fell into this bucket, like, I moved across the country to chase an opportunity in New York, not making a lot of money, but in an industry and working for a guy that I thought was really cool and who was moving the needle. The latter of what I just said was true. He was moving the needle. He was cool. It was a great experience. I'm no longer down that path specifically, but it set the tone on my life that, hey, we're being intentional. We're operating with a sense of urgency, not rushed, not panicking, not stressing, but, really utilizing that time, especially if you're 22, 23, 24, before kids start getting married and having kids. And, the mindset and your risk tolerance at 25 is a lot different than 30. And I think the average 25-year-old former athlete dramatically underestimates how precious that time is to pivot and make mistakes. And it's just a huge, huge topic for me, and because it's just so common, the transition being difficult for former athletes, as you know.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that exact same way, and there's definitely been days where I'll be sitting at my desk at work, and I'm like, "What am I doing with my life?" But I'm like, "All right, I've, done a few things. I've gone on the radio, like I've done multiple things and like trying to build up." But like you said, yeah, I think so many people just get comfortable with where they're at, and it gets tough to, find your purpose. When was it that you kind of found your purpose in this sports talk industry where you were like, I could make an impact and this is something I really enjoy doing?
Yeah, to be honest, the whole find your purpose narrative has never resonated with me. I
Mhm,
totally see people that, gravitate towards that. I've always struggled with that because, uh, you know, it was quarterback for the first 18 years of my life. And I
mhm,
just think if you're always seeking a purpose and it's not like readily right in front of you, I think that can lead to even more self-doubt. So,
mhm,
I've never to be honest, I've never latched onto that term, but to the root of your question of like, all right,
mhm,
when did I find the lane in my life and kind of that direction? Honestly, it was probably 2 years ago, August of 2024. I got to a point in my life where I'd been working. Um, so I made four career pivots in my 20s. At the
mhm,
time, I was 28 2 years ago. I'm 30 now. And I got to an opportunity where I dove all into content creation and being a content creator, which is just the more buttoned up version of being an influencer. Like people,
yeah,
influencer has negative connotation, content creator has positive connotation, and then broadcasting as well, and being able to do that full time. And that was really the first time in my 20s since I played quarterback that I was really all in on a singular lane, or at least a singular path. And that took work to get there. That took a lot of pivots and
mhm.
investment throughout my 20s to get to that point. But yeah, being fully committed to covering football for a living, both as a content creator and personality and everything that comes with that, and then also calling games in the fall and broadcasting that. That was the singular focus.
Yeah, when it came to creating content, especially I've seen all your things on, just college football and just football in general. I think a lot of people are in fear of embarrassment or, in fear of judgment. And so they don't take that leap where they just, put the content out there or they, even with getting a new job or things like that. What kind of advice would you have for someone who hasn't taken that leap or just said, okay, I'm going to go and do this?
Give yourself grace first and foremost. I wish I would have done that, and that sounds obvious and maybe a little soft. I don't know what the makeup of your audience, but like,
Mm,
I say that because I think a lot of people get frustrated with themselves when they see their friends or peers executing, and then that
mm,
frustration can lead to even longer delays versus if you give
mhm,
yourself grace and realize, hey, life's got a million things going around. It's all good. If I told myself my New Year's resolution was get one piece of content up a week and I've already failed in the first month, that's okay. That happens. And I think there's little invisible pillars that I think need to knock down. For a lot of people, the first one is just getting out of their own, or getting out of the insecurity bubble of just being someone who posts content. That in and itself of being, oh, Max, nice piece of content you posted. Like, what's
mhm,
up with that? Like, what's that picture? To then now, like I used to be there. And then now it's like, oh, Brownie's doing his thing. Yep, he's posting his content. Like
mhm,
he's doing his thing. That takes time and reps to get through. And then from there, once you get past the insecurity, it's about getting a process and a flow in place and committing to that. And again, to me, like it took me probably 2 years to get past the insecurity phase. It probably took me another 2 years to get past the like, for a 2 year period, I was sporadic. I'd post one thing one week, one thing the next week, and then nothing for 2 weeks kind of thing. Now I've got a consistent rhythm in. In hindsight, I would say, all right, Max, if that was a 4 year window for you, how can I condense that down to 2 years? Like that's the mistake I probably, or 1 year. I mean, ideally 1 week, but to me, that's not necessarily realistic. But if that process took me 4 years, how could I have condensed that down to 1 year? And the content world's in a totally different place than, I'm talking from call it 2018 to 2021. But yeah, that'd be, give yourself grace and do whatever you can to, the analogy I always use with content is it's like a game of baseball. If you're a hitter, what can you do to have the most amount of quality at bats? Everyone always talks about in terms of viral. If viral's a home run, just think about singles. Just think about singles continuing to show up. Eventually you'll get a double here and there, maybe one triple, and then, maybe the virality comes about. But I think a lot of people are always chasing the home run, and it's a recipe for consistently striking out.
Yeah, I can confidently say I fell into that even with just the podcast. Was when I first started, I was fearing judgment. And I heard one thing that someone said and was like, if it doesn't go well, like there's nothing to worry about because that means no one listened. And I was like, oh, I guess that's true. So there's no reason not to start it. And then after a while, I put a few episodes out and was like, "Ugh, I wish I just got more views." And I was like, you're not doing it for the views, really. Like I'm doing it because I love the conversations. It's somewhere to start when just talking about sports and talking about athletes. And yeah, it's every episode's I feel like been a single. And then there's been a few. I just had an episode with Kevin McGonigal, who's the number 2 prospect in all of baseball. And that one has gotten like a few more views, and it was a great conversation. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, great, it's got a whole bunch of views, but like that was just so cool. I got to talk to a top prospect. I feel like that's the same way you're thinking when it comes to content. It's just like you just start doing it and you do it for yourself or because you're making an impact on the people who do listen rather than I need this many views. I need to do this.
Was there a moment or a conversation for you where it was like, all right, now I'm committing, or like enough's enough? Like, I feel like when I look back on my content journey, there's, whether it's things I consumed or conversations that I had where it was like, all right, enough's enough. I got to level this thing up.
Yeah, I think it was actually Todd Doxson, his name. He's played at Iowa State and then went on, signed with the Dolphins, older guy, but he does play-by-play broadcasting just for high school sports all around Nebraska. And so I met with him and he was like, you just got to do it. Like no one's going to care. Like go at it. Reach out to a whole bunch of your buddies you played with that are now in professional baseball. Like just do it. And I feel like when I started the first episode, I just heard consistency is going to be the way. So I release an episode every 2 weeks, and for a whole year I've done it. And now I'm just like, I made this so hard on myself when I first started, but like, it's so easy now.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. It's like the never ending game of, all right, now you got that tier figured out. All right, how do I level up? I'm sure there's all the editing and distribution and all that. Like there's always another phase, but that's fun. That's fun. That's why one of my favorite parts of content is the entrepreneurial side of it and the hustle and all that, which is all part of the game.
Yeah. And one thing I really like is you can't just like white knuckle creativity. Like it just comes randomly and you just got to let it happen. And I feel like you do that with all your content. Like it's not like you're just like, I need to get this video. I need to get this video. Like you enjoy doing it, which I feel like in this day and age, enjoying what you're doing just makes it so much more enjoyable.
Yeah. I do think though, you're spot on, but there's two sides to that coin. I think a lot of people trap themselves where they hear content, they see content, and they're like, all right, sweet, I want to dabble in. And they dramatically underestimate the work it does take, even if you are being creative and even if you are having fun and even if you are, you know, just having a good time with it. Like it is a lot of work. Like, that video that you referenced, I forget if we were offline or online, but I had a video go viral this week of me doing a bit like, my color commentating towards a Sunday night broadcast. And even that video, like it takes, even I was like to my wife, like, hey, pull up the phone real quick. I'm going to voice over Troy Aikman right here. And my wife's a content creator. So luckily she like kind of knew the angles to film. But my point there is it's still like a half an hour process by the time that I put just the title on, caption it, post it, and then syndicate it to all the other social media platforms. Like when I'm just sitting there and I got a Corona to my left, I could just be chilling, watching ball, but it is like a
Yeah.
30-minute task. And obviously the video worked out. So I'm like, sweet, let's do this every time. But I guess my point there is, time and time again, I have conversations with people where they get in and they don't realize, okay, you might have consumed that blog post and in your mind, I'm like, oh, that person took 10 minutes to write that. But
Mhm.
really they took 2 hours, 3 hours to format the
Yeah.
whole thing. And especially now with how competitive content is, which different world than it was 5 years ago. That's always kind of the Achilles heel for some folks.
Yeah. Would you say that you're obsessed? I feel like it's easy to do things in any aspect, whether it's you are still an athlete and you're going to get an extra workout in or go to the field and throw a few extra routes. It makes it easier when you're obsessed. Would you say that you're obsessed with, just what you do?
No, only a sense of I know what it's like to be obsessed. I feel like I was that way as a quarterback. I would say
Mhm.
I'm committed. I would say I
Yeah.
whatever one notch down of obsessed is. I don't know if I'm
Mhm.
at that level. Like it's
Yeah.
still very many nights and mornings where like it's work, right? You're showing up to do a job. But I do love, and I just said this, I do love the entrepreneurial side of content
Mhm.
where, hey, I'm not just posting videos to, post videos. Like I'm posting videos to build a business. And I don't think everyone wants to be in front of the camera, but I do think
Yeah.
everyone wants to live life on their own terms. And to me, content is the best vehicle to do that for me and how I'm wired in my life. And, the pursuit of that game is fun. Like I in my previous job, I was a commercial real estate broker, which
Mhm.
cutthroat industry, a lot of cold calling,
Mhm.
a lot of sales and whatnot. And, similar mindset in terms of building the books of business, so to speak, but
Mhm.
content is way better in my opinion.
100%. I want to talk about just you as a broadcaster, as a color commentator. How did you get into that? And then also, what is kind of your goal as a color commentator? Like, what is your goal for the fans to hear and bring in when you're color commentating?
Yeah. I mean, it all starts back to when I was playing. I was the backup for most of my college career, and on Fridays, backup quarterbacks during the season don't get any reps. It's all the
Mhm.
starter, and that's where it all started. I would be on the side as the backup quarterback, and every Friday, Cody Kessler and names that guys will recognize. Ronald Jones was the running back, and
Mhm.
Nelson Aguilar and Juju Smith-Schuster were the receivers, and I'd be on the side commentating the 2-minute drive. It was like me and our tight ends coach and then like 5 players just observing. But that kind of
Mhm.
planted the seed in my head of like, hey, this would be fun to pursue whenever my time comes. At the time, I
Mhm.
thought that would be 20 years later and I'd
Yeah.
be, NFL run and then just kind of nicely slide into the booth
Mhm.
after that. When a lot of players, as you know, kind of think, all right, do I want to go media side or coaching side? Most guys
Mhm.
go coaching if you want to stay around football. But I was the media side always spoke to me a little bit more. And then similar experience happened. I got hurt at Pitt, and ironically, the true freshman playing at that time was Kenny Pickett, who, for
Mhm.
your audience that doesn't know who that is, former NFL starting
Yeah.
quarterback for the Steelers, started some games this year for the Raiders. But he was doing a true freshman scrimmage, and my coach gave me the mic to be on the intercom of our indoor facility, and I was like, announcing that little true freshman
Mhm.
scrimmage on like kind of a
Yeah.
jokey, lighthearted, kind of banter type of vibe. But again, it planted the seed of like, hey, whenever this is done, I would love to give this a go. And then my career ended only like, 18 months after that moment right there. And at that point, it's right when content started to be mainstream. Mainstream's a subjective term, but that
Mhm.
was January of 2018, or like the 2018 period. I always think like anything before that, people kind of dismissed content in
Mhm.
totality. Anything after that, you start getting into the TikTok wave where I think the white collar mainstream world kind of and blue collar, but like woke up to
Mhm.
the power of content. I say
Yeah.
that because then I leveraged content to do some YouTube breakdowns, which then got my foot in the door to do legitimate color commentating. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, Dan, that's a long-winded way of saying it all started back in college when I was playing of it, planted the seed that I want to get into commentating.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, it's your story, but how you just name drop, Nelson Aguilar and Juju
Yeah.
Smith-Schuster, and then, Kenny Pickett was the guy that looked up to you at one point. So that's so cool. And then, so you get into the booth now. what's your goal as a color commentator? Not your personal goal, but for how you want the audience to experience it.
Yeah, I don't have as crisp of an answer as I did like 3
Mhm.
years ago, because my answer
Yeah.
used to be, "Oh, I want to call, college. I want to have a full package of college football games, which means calling games every single week for a big time network." And it's awesome, and I feel super lucky. But I got that opportunity this past year and the year before. I did some work with CW, but this year I was with ESPN and ACC Network, and I'm doing that. The answer though is, like, I want to just keep calling bigger and better games,
Yeah.
which is every color commentator's answer. But Saturdays in the booth are my favorite part of this world that I'm in, this content
Mhm.
broadcasting world. So that's always my North Star. I'll- Originally all the content work I was doing was to get me exposure to then get opportunities in the booth. That has evolved a little bit where hopefully we keep rocking and rolling with the opportunities in the booth and then make money and have a business on the content side as well. And they kind of go hand in hand there. But to answer the second part of your question in terms of, what do I want the viewer to feel like?
Mhm.
Um, I, I, I always think, there's broadcasters that entertain, there's broadcasters that inform, and I'd
Mhm.
like to be the through line between both of them. And
Mhm.
that's probably a lot of what a lot of broadcasters say. But I
Mhm.
do think I have the ability to take high level X's and O's and bring it down to digestible bits for the
Mhm.
everyday football fan. I think that's a strong suit that I have, and I love the X's and O's side of things. I think
Yeah.
the average college football fan dramatically underestimates how much scheme is going on relative to when you watch golf, basketball, baseball, hockey. I want to be the guy that can distill that, but not in a way where it's, hey, come sit down for my 4 hour lecture, or let me
Yeah.
show you how smart I am. Like, can I have the personality chops to have that be fun and entertaining while also showing why I think football is the best game, the chess match that's on display every single down?
Yeah, I think you're so great and your personality is so great at, entertaining and educating at the same time and finding that, great balance. I actually have a archive on Instagram of saved posts that it's called OC. So if I ever become an offensive coordinator, like for my kids or at any point, I have all these drawn up plays that I can just go back and look at. Cause yeah, there's so many schemes and so much that goes into it. I want to ask you, as a former
That's
quarterback,
awesome.
what do you think makes a great college football quarterback?
Yeah, I think obviously you got to have the talent, accuracy, and arm strength is huge. I think mobility is a non-negotiable now. I was
Mhm.
like we talked about, I was the number one quarterback in my class. I would not have been that now because I was a pocket passer in an era right when pocket passing was kind of phasing out. I think you have to play at the highest level. You have to have an element of mobility. That's not saying you have to be Lamar Jackson, but you do have to be able to move in the pocket. But then your leadership, how you're wired. Are you the type of guy that can have lunch with every single person on the team, or are you a guy that's gonna go clicky and all that? I think um, leading by example is kind of a bunch of BS. I think that's a term just to make people that aren't extroverts feel better about themselves. I think as a quarterback, at a certain point, to be that dude, you have to have a vocal element to what you're about. If you're not, that's fine. Don't be someone phony. But I do think that's not maximizing like the highest level of quarterbacking abilities, just given how vocal that role is. But yeah, the leadership side, the mentality side, you got to love the X's and O's side of things, and obviously the physical traits as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I mean, I love just quarterback play, and you can watch it all day and just appreciate every little thing and every just kind of trait that each different quarterback has. I mean, like watching Oregon, I've all the time, I watch Justin Herbert play, and there's some things about him game. I'm like, this is astonishing that he can do. And then same thing with Bo Nix. Like, I'm just like, it's so cool. And to watch different guys and how they go throughout a game and just dominate in their own way. So what's next for you? College football season just wrapped up, going into next year. What are your goals? What's happening for Max?
Yeah, I'm trying to just double down on all the little avenues I have going on right now. I feel like it's so easy to fall into, hey, new year, new me, new year,
Mhm.
new pursuit. And for so much of my 20s, that was the case. It felt like every year there was some new like pillar I was trying to knock down, or some like last year, a huge initiative for me and my business was building out YouTube long form. But I'm to the point now where I have seeds planted in YouTube long form and short form with TikTok and Instagram, pursuing some new content formats on both those platforms. I'm dabbling a little bit in LinkedIn, but I could do more. I'm in the ESPN ACC college football ecosystem, but I'd love to be even more entrenched in that. And again, kind of trying to water all those seeds that I currently have planted and double down on what works and optimize my process and the people and the teams that I have helping me, rather than, a lot of these conversations that I have are like, oh, you're going to start a podcast, or, I want to do some, groundbreaking initiative or some brand new pursuit. That's not my 2026. I don't think. I think that was my mindset in years past, but at a certain point, I think that kind of works against you. So it's diving into the business and all that, and then also kind of, enjoying what I've built too, which I don't think always, gets a ton of pub, but my wife and I are fortunate enough to be at a place where, I'm not stressing over, hey, what's the next career, move kind of thing. And we've been married for 3 years. So also trying to, enjoy what we've built as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think that's so important to, not think it has to be something huge and extraordinary every single year. Like it can just be perfecting your craft. And then, like you said, enjoying the little things and making most of that and, being grateful every single day. Cause that's the most important thing. I end every conversation with the same question. If you could go back and give your younger self, let's say freshman Max at USC, just one piece of advice regarding the mental game, what would it be?
Where I always go with this answer, and I get this asked a bunch, so I should come up with a better answer, but it's have fun. And that sounds generic, and people are going to hear that and be like, oh, I've heard that. But to take you back to where I was at, I was so serious and so intense. And I grew up and I wasn't a robot, but I grew up in an era where Mamba mentality was championed, where it was, you got to be investing every minute of every day into your athletic pursuit, which is a great mindset for Kobe Bryant. And, I relate a lot to that wiring. I know how, that might sound arrogant and whatnot, but I do think at a certain point that worked against me. And if I had kept having fun and kept the air lighter around me, I think I would have played better football. And when I look at, again, I'm 30 years old. When I look at all my teammates that are still playing now, Sam Darnold, Leonard Williams, one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL, Uchenna Nwosu, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, Adoree Jackson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Brian O'Neill was my right tackle, or my left tackle at Pitt, one of the highest paid right tackles in the NFL. All those guys are dramatically different personalities. The common theme with all of them, they were fun guys, fun personalities. They were not the most intense guys in the locker room, which I think sometimes is a misperception with high-level athletes. Those guys were able to get their work done, don't get me wrong, but they were able to turn the switch off and have a beer on a Friday. They were able to turn the switch off and go have an afternoon off and do your thing. And I think that's allowed them to have high-end success that when I was in that phase, that college football phase, I knew that, I told me, oh, I have fun, of course, like go have a blast. But I wasn't able to actually live that out. And some of that's just personality and whatnot. But yeah, that's where my head goes right away.
I love it. I think that's a great answer and spot on. Have fun with it. You're playing a sport, you're playing football. Make the most of it, enjoy it. Max, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here. Super thankful for you. And then also just appreciate all the content you've put out and looking forward to see more of it.
Means a lot, man. Yeah. Thanks for giving me the platform and great chatting.
Yes, sir. Thank you again to Max for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.